Did you know that Washington is home to a volcano that exploded with the force of 1,600 atomic bombs? That beneath its forests lie ghost towns swallowed by eruptions, and that its mountains hold glaciers larger than some countries? Washington is not just coffee shops and tech giants. It's raw volcanic fury, ancient rainforests, and geographical extremes that will blow your mind. Get ready, because today you'll discover 50 incredible facts about Washington that will completely change the way you see the Pacific Northwest. 50. The mountain that exploded. On May 18, 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted with the force of 1,600 Hiroshima bombs. The blast removed 1,300 feet from the summit, flattened 230 square miles of forest, killed 57 people, and sent ash across 11 states. Trees 17 miles away were snapped like toothpicks. The lateral blast traveled at 300 miles per hour. Spirit Lake disappeared under avalanche debris 600 feet deep. It was the deadliest volcanic eruption in U.S. history. And here's the terrifying part. Mount St. Helens is just one of 5 active volcanoes in Washington. The Cascade Range isn't scenery, it's a loaded weapon. 49. America's snowiest place. Mount Baker holds the world record for snowfall in a single season, 1,140 inches, 95 feet, during the 1998 to 1999 winter. That's enough snow to bury a 9-story building. The mountain regularly receives 600-plus inches of snow annually, more than anywhere else in the United States. The reason? Moisture-laden Pacific storms slam into Mount Baker's 10,781-foot summit, dumping snow constantly from October through May. Ski resorts here stay open into summer. You can ski in July, while Seattle swelters at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a frozen fortress just 30 miles from the Canadian border. 48. The only temperate rainforest in the continental U.S. The Olympic Peninsula is home to the Hoh Rainforest, one of the few temperate rainforests in North America. It receives 140 to 170 inches of rain per year, creating a landscape so green it looks fake. Sitka spruce and western hemlock trees grow over 300 feet tall. Every surface is covered in moss, ferns, and lichens. The forest floor is a spongy carpet of decomposing vegetation feet thick. Walk through it, and you feel like you've entered Middle Earth. These rainforests exist because the Olympic Mountains force Pacific moisture upward, creating near-constant rain on the western slopes. 47. Where 3 tectonic plates collide. Washington sits at the junction of 3 tectonic plates: the North American Plate, the Juan de Fuca Plate, and the Pacific Plate. The Juan de Fuca Plate is subducting beneath North America, creating the Cascade volcanoes and the Cascadia subduction zone. This is why Washington has active volcanoes, frequent earthquakes, and the constant threat of a magnitude 9.0 plus megaquake. The state's geography is literally being built and destroyed by tectonic forces happening right now, miles beneath your feet. 46. The megaquake that's coming. The Cascadia subduction zone stretches from Northern California to Vancouver Island, and it produces massive earthquakes every 300 to 500 years on average. The last one hit on January 26, 1700, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake so powerful it sent a tsunami to Japan. We're 324 years overdue. When the next one strikes, it will shake the ground for 4 to 6 minutes, trigger landslides, and send 30 to 100-foot tsunami waves crashing into the Washington coast within 15 to 30 minutes. FEMA estimates 13,000 deaths and $80 billion in damage. Coastal Washington has evacuation routes and tsunami sirens everywhere. It's not if, but when. 45. The coast that time forgot. Washington's Pacific coast is wild, rugged, and largely undeveloped. Olympic National Park protects 73 miles of pristine wilderness coastline, where towering sea stacks rise from the surf, tide pools teem with life, and driftwood the size of buildings litters the beaches. Unlike California or Oregon, this coast remains primitive. No boardwalks, no restaurants, just raw Pacific Ocean crashing into ancient rock formations. The Ozette Triangle is so remote, it's only accessible by hiking trail, and it's where you can see 300-year-old cedar trees standing at the edge of the continent. 44. When the biggest landslide ever hit Washington. In 2014, the Oso landslide near Arlington killed 43 people when a hillside suddenly liquefied and swept away an entire neighborhood. The slide moved 18 million tons of earth, burying homes under 30 to 70 feet of mud and debris. The geographical cause? Glacial sediments deposited during the Ice Age are unstable. When saturated with rain, they can suddenly fail catastrophically. Western Washington sits on these deposits, meaning landslides are a constant threat. After heavy rain, entire hillsides can transform into flowing rivers of mud in seconds. 43. The glacier-carved fjords. Puget Sound isn't a typical bay. It's a complex system of fjords carved by massive glaciers during the last ice age. The sound is 100 miles long, with channels over 900 feet deep. Hood Canal, despite its name, is a natural fjord dropping to 600 feet. These glacial troughs were carved by ice sheets over a mile thick that bulldozed through the landscape 15,000 years ago. Today, Puget Sound's deep channels allow submarines to navigate from the Pacific to Naval Base Kitsap, one of the largest submarine bases in the world. The geography makes it strategically invaluable. 42. Washington's Surprise Desert. Everyone thinks Washington is all rain and forests, but the Columbia Basin in eastern Washington is high desert. The Yakima Valley receives only 8 inches of rain annually. Sagebrush, tumbleweeds, and rattlesnakes thrive here. Summer temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit regularly. This isn't a small dry patch. It covers thousands of square miles, more than a third of the state. The reason? The Cascade Mountains create a rain shadow, blocking Pacific moisture. Western Washington drowns in rain, while eastern Washington withers in sun. It's two completely different states divided by mountains. 41. The trees that rule the world. Washington's old-growth forests contain the largest concentration of biomass per acre on Earth. Douglas fir, western red cedar, and Sitka spruce trees grow to mind-boggling sizes. The tallest Douglas firs exceed 300 feet. Western red cedars live over 1,000 years and grow 20 feet in diameter. These forests are so productive, they store more carbon per acre than tropical rainforests. The combination of mild temperatures, abundant rain, and nutrient-rich volcanic soil creates perfect growing conditions. These aren't just trees, they're biological skyscrapers. 40. Mount Rainier, the volcano watching Seattle. Mount Rainier towers 14,411 feet above sea level, dominating the Seattle skyline. But geographically, it's a massive threat. Rainier is considered one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world because it's covered in 35 square miles of glaciers and snowfields. If it erupts, these will melt instantly, creating lahars, volcanic mudflows, that could bury valleys and reach Puget Sound in hours. Towns like Puyallup, Sumner, and parts of Tacoma sit on ancient lahar deposits. The mountain has produced lahars that reached the current Seattle area multiple times in the past 10,000 years. It will happen again. 39. The land of 10,000 waterfalls. Washington is absolutely drowning in waterfalls. Snoqualmie Falls drops 268 feet, more than Niagara Falls. Palouse Falls plunges 198 feet into a circular canyon carved by Ice Age floods. The state has over 3,000 named waterfalls, but the actual number is much higher. After heavy rain or snowmelt, every cliff face in the Cascades erupts with temporary falls. Some valleys have so many waterfalls they don't have individual names. The combination of mountains, glaciers, and rainfall creates perfect conditions. Washington is a waterfall factory. 38. The Tsunami Ghost Forest. Along the Washington coast, you can still see evidence of the 1700 Cascadia earthquake and tsunami. Forests of dead trees, gray snags called ghost forests, stand in coastal marshes where land suddenly dropped 6 to 8 feet during the quake. Salt water drowned the trees, and they've stood dead for 324 years. Scientists studied these ghost forests and matched them with Japanese tsunami records to pinpoint the exact date, January 26, 1700, at 9 p.m. These trees are apocalyptic warnings, reminders that the coast dropped into the ocean once and will again. 37. The eruption that created Spirit Lake. Before 1980, Spirit Lake was a pristine mountain lake surrounded by old-growth forest. Mount St. Helens eruption buried it under 300 feet of debris, raising the lake bed 200 feet and completely transforming it. The eruption dumped millions of logs into the lake, creating a floating log mat covering square miles. For years, the logs drifted as a massive raft. Today, many have sunk or washed ashore, but Spirit Lake remains utterly changed. It's geographically a different lake, sitting 200 feet higher than before, surrounded by barren pumice plains instead of forest. The mountain rebuilt its backyard. 36. The volcano that's building a new mountain. Mount St. Helens isn't done. Since 2004, a new lava dome has been growing inside the crater. It's already over 1,000 feet tall. The mountain is slowly rebuilding itself, pushing molten rock upward and creating a new summit. Scientists monitor it continuously. Small earthquakes indicate magma movement underground. The volcano is alive and active, reconstructing what it destroyed in 1980. In a few thousand years, if left alone, Mount St. Helens will be taller than before. Destruction and creation happen simultaneously. 35. The mystery of the channeled scablands. Eastern Washington's landscape looks like another planet. The channeled scablands are a network of ancient river channels, coulees, and dry waterfalls carved into basalt bedrock. For decades, geologists couldn't explain them. Then, J. Harlan Bretz proposed something radical: catastrophic floods. During the Ice Age, glacial Lake Missoula in Montana repeatedly burst through ice dams, sending 500 cubic miles of water racing across Washington at 60 miles per hour. These were the largest floods in Earth's history. They carved Grand Coulee, Dry Falls, and the Palouse Canyons in days. The scablands are scars from apocalyptic floods that reshaped Washington's geography in geological instants. 34. The waterfall bigger than Niagara. Dry Falls is a horseshoe-shaped cliff 3.5 miles wide and 400 feet tall. It's the remains of the largest waterfall ever known to have existed. During the Missoula floods 15,000 years ago, water flowed over this cliff with 10 times the volume of all current rivers on Earth combined. It was Niagara Falls on steroids. Today, it's completely dry, a massive amphitheater of stone in the middle of the desert. Standing at the overlook, you're looking at where an unimaginable wall of water once fell, creating the most powerful waterfall in history for a few catastrophic days. 33. Washington's alien state fossil. Washington's state fossil is the Columbian mammoth, massive Ice Age elephants that roamed the state until 10,000 years ago. Fossils have been found throughout Washington, especially in the channeled scablands where Missoula floods exposed ancient deposits. But the coolest discovery was in 1977 when a nearly complete mammoth skeleton was found near Sequim on the Olympic Peninsula, complete with a bone spear point embedded in its ribs. This proved humans hunted mammoths here 14,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest records of human activity in the Pacific Northwest. 32. Washington's ancient rainforest under your feet. Much of eastern Washington sits on the Columbia River basalts, one of the largest volcanic features on Earth. Between 17 and 6 million years ago, massive fissures opened in eastern Washington and Oregon, releasing floods of lava that covered 81,000 square miles. Individual flows were hundreds of feet thick and traveled hundreds of miles. The lava buried entire forests, fossilized trees, and created the layers of basalt visible in coulees and canyons throughout eastern Washington. The state is literally built on top of an ancient volcanic apocalypse. 31. Washington is still volcano country. Washington has 5 active volcanoes: Mount St. Helens, Glacier Peak, Mount Rainier, Mount Baker, and Mount Adams. All of them have erupted in the past 200 years except Adams' last eruption approximately 1,000 years ago. These aren't dormant, they're active, monitored 24/7 by the USGS Cascades Volcano Observatory. Mount Rainier shows signs of heat, steam vents, and occasional earthquake swarms. Glacier Peak is the most remote and potentially the most dangerous because an eruption would go largely unnoticed until lahars reached populated valleys. Washington's mountains are volcanoes waiting to wake up. 30. A lake that could drown Spokane. Lake Chelan is 50.5 miles long, making it the 3rd deepest lake in the United States at 1,486 feet. It's so deep that its bottom sits 388 feet below sea level. The lake occupies a glacially carved trough that would be a fjord if it reached the ocean. It holds enough water to cover all of Washington state in several inches of water. The lake is surrounded by mountains, accessible at its northern end only by boat or floatplane. Towns like Stehekin have no road access. Lake Chelan is geographically more alpine fjord than typical lake. 29. The Ice Age floods that carved Washington. The Missoula floods weren't a single event. They happened repeatedly over 2,000 years, perhaps 40 to 100 times. Each flood reshaped Washington's geography. Water 1,000 feet deep raced across the state, carving coulees, creating waterfalls, and scattering house-sized boulders hundreds of miles. These floods carved the Columbia River Gorge, deposited the Willamette Valley's soil, and created the San Juan Islands by flooding valleys between mountains. Everything about Washington's geography west of the Cascades was shaped by these catastrophic events. 28. The obsidian flow you can touch. At Mount St. Helens, you can find obsidian, volcanic glass, scattered across the landscape from ancient eruptions. But the best place for obsidian is Glass Mountain near Medicine Lake. Native Americans quarried obsidian here for thousands of years, creating tools so sharp they're still used in modern surgical scalpels. You can find obsidian scattered across central Washington's volcanic landscapes, glittering black glass created when lava cooled so quickly it didn't have time to crystallize. It's pure volcanic glass, sharp enough to cut at the molecular level. 27. Waterfalls that disappear. In the Cascades, dozens of waterfalls flow strong in spring when snow melts, then disappear completely by late summer. Snow Creek Falls drops 450 feet in May, but by August, it's a dry cliff face. Spray Falls in Mount Rainier National Park plunges 354 feet during snowmelt, but vanishes by September. These are ephemeral waterfalls, existing only during high water. Washington's seasonal snowpack creates temporary geography. Features appear and disappear with the seasons. The landscape is constantly transforming. 26. The erratic boulders from Canada. Scattered across western Washington are enormous boulders that don't belong. They're glacial erratics carried by ice sheets from Canada during the last ice age. Some weigh hundreds of tons. They're granite from British Columbia, sitting on Washington's sedimentary rock, proving that glaciers over a mile thick once covered the Puget Sound region. You can find these erratics in parks, neighborhoods, and forests. They're geological tourists, rocks from another country delivered by ice 15,000 years ago. 25. Seattle's Seven Hills, built on glacial deposits. Seattle's famous Seven Hills, Capitol Hill, First Hill, Beacon Hill, Queen Anne Hill, Magnolia, Denny Hill, regraded, and West Seattle are all glacial deposits. These hills are piles of sand, gravel, and rocks left behind when glaciers melted. The city is built on glacial till, which causes problems. The sediments are unstable when saturated with rain, leading to landslides. The Magnolia neighborhood has experienced major landslides. The geography that gave Seattle its character also makes it geologically hazardous. 24. Washington's Coastal Wilderness Islands. The San Juan Islands are mountain peaks that were flooded when glaciers melted and sea level rose. There are over 400 islands, though only about 60 are named and fewer than 20 inhabited. The islands are actually the tops of a submerged mountain range. Ferry routes weave through narrow channels between forested islands where orcas swim and bald eagles nest. The geography is spectacular. Rocky shores, hidden coves, and dramatic tidal currents. The islands are what happens when you flood mountains with seawater. 23. An underground lava world. Washington has lava tube caves throughout its volcanic regions. Ape Cave at Mount St. Helens is the longest lava tube in the continental United States at 2.5 miles. It formed when lava flowed beneath a solidified crust, then drained away, leaving a hollow tube. The cave is tall enough to walk through, with ice formations that persist year-round in some sections. It's 42 degrees Fahrenheit inside year-round. Exploring lava tubes means walking through tunnels carved by liquid rock just 2,000 years ago. It's Washington's volcanic underworld. 22. The Wallowa Mountains. Wait, wrong state. Actually, Washington has the North Cascades, often called the American Alps. These mountains are jagged granite peaks, glaciers, and alpine lakes that rival anything in Switzerland. Over 300 glaciers exist in the North Cascades, more than in any other U.S. mountain range outside Alaska. Peaks like Mount Shuksan and Mount Challenger are technical climbs requiring ice axes and crampons. The wilderness is so vast and rugged that entire valleys remain unexplored. It's one of the most remote, wild mountain ranges in the lower 48. 21. Where the Columbia River almost died. The Columbia River Gorge is an 80-mile canyon cutting through the Cascade Range. The gorge exists only because the Columbia River is older than the mountains. As the Cascades slowly rose over millions of years, the river carved through them, maintaining its path to the ocean. If the mountains had risen faster, the river would have been dammed, and the entire geography of the Pacific Northwest would be different. The Columbia Gorge is proof that rivers can be more powerful than mountains if given enough time. 20. A high desert continental divide. The Cascade Range creates Washington's most dramatic divide. West of the Cascades, temperate rainforest, 60 to 170 inches of annual rainfall, dense forests. East of the Cascades, high desert, 8 to 15 inches of rain, sagebrush, and wheat fields. Drive over Stevens Pass or Snoqualmie Pass and you watch the landscape transform in 20 miles. Green forests give way to brown desert. The mountains create a rain shadow so extreme it's like crossing into a different climate zone. One range of mountains determines everything. 19. From rainforest to desert in one state. Washington might have the most extreme climate diversity of any state. The Olympic Peninsula receives 170-plus inches of rain annually. Sequim, just 40 miles away, gets only 17 inches because it sits in the Olympic rain shadow. Eastern Washington's desert gets scorching summers over 110 degrees Fahrenheit, while Seattle stays mild. Mount Baker receives 50-plus feet of snow, while the San Juan Islands barely get dustings. You can experience rainforest, desert, alpine tundra, and coastal climates all in one state, sometimes in the same day. 18. The wild Skykomish River. The Skykomish River is one of Washington's premier whitewater rivers, with Class 3 to 4 rapids that challenge experienced rafters. But what makes it geographically fascinating is its glacial origin. The river drains directly from glaciers on Mount Index and Guy Peak, meaning its flow varies dramatically with temperature and season. On hot summer days, glacial melt causes the river to rise in afternoon. The water is milky turquoise from glacial flour, fine silt ground by moving ice. You're rafting on water that was solid ice just hours earlier. 17. Washington's Les Hills. The Palouse region in southeast Washington features rolling hills that look nothing like typical Washington landscapes. These hills are made of loess, wind-blown dust deposited during Ice Age when dust storms carried fine sediment from glacial outwash plains. The loess is hundreds of feet deep in places, creating incredibly fertile soil. The Palouse produces some of the highest wheat yields in the world. These aren't glacial deposits or volcanic features. They're dust that became farmland, hills built by wind. 16. Mount Rainier's Ghost Forests. Mount Rainier National Park has entire forests of dead standing trees killed by volcanic gases seeping from fumaroles near the summit. Carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide vents kill trees from the roots up. These ghost forests warn that the mountain is active. Steam vents at the summit stay warm enough to melt snow, creating ice caves in the glaciers. The mountain is alive, breathing volcanic gases and maintaining heat even when it's not erupting. Rainier is a sleeping giant, but it's not asleep. It's just resting. 15. The richest soil in America. The Willamette Valley in Oregon, extending into southern Washington, has some of the most fertile soil anywhere, deposited by the Missoula floods. But Washington's Yakima Valley rivals it. The combination of volcanic ash, glacial deposits, and irrigation from Columbia River water creates perfect growing conditions. Washington is the nation's top producer of apples, hops, cherries, and pears. The desert geography seems hostile, but add water and volcanic soil becomes incredibly productive. Eastern Washington's agriculture exists because geography provided perfect soil. 14. The Three Forks of Snoqualmie. Snoqualmie Falls is Washington's most famous waterfall, dropping 268 feet, 100 feet taller than Niagara Falls. But geographically, the falls exist because of an ancient glacial diversion. The Snoqualmie River originally flowed a different route. Glaciers blocked the old channel, forcing the river over a basalt cliff, creating the falls. A hydroelectric plant inside the cliff has generated power since 1898. The falls are artificial in the sense that humans control flow for power generation, but the geography is all Ice Age reshaping. 13. Dunes in the high desert. Moses Lake has sand dunes in the middle of eastern Washington's desert. These dunes are leftovers from the Missoula floods, which deposited massive amounts of sand. Wind has sculpted the sand into 40-foot dunes that migrate slowly across the landscape. They look like something from the Sahara, not Washington. You can sandboard down them, or just marvel that Washington has every geography: rainforests, glaciers, deserts, and now sand dunes. The state refuses to be categorized. 12. When Washington was underwater. About 50 million years ago, much of Washington was underwater or part of a tropical archipelago. Fossils of palm trees, ancient alligators, and marine creatures have been found in central Washington. The Cascades didn't exist yet. The ocean reached far inland. Washington's mountains are made of oceanic crust pushed upward when tectonic plates collided. The entire state is geological recycling, ancient seafloor transformed into mountains. Dig deep enough, and you find ocean beneath the forests. 11. Waterfalls hidden in canyons. The Palouse Falls drops 198 feet into a circular canyon carved by the Missoula floods. The falls are the last active waterfall on the Missoula floods path to the Pacific. During floods, this waterfall was part of a raging torrent cutting through basalt. Today, it's a peaceful cascade in a dramatic canyon. In spring, the falls roar. In late summer, they dwindle to a trickle. The canyon walls show layers of basalt flows, each layer a separate ancient lava flood that covered eastern Washington. 10. Towering sea stacks. Washington's Pacific coast features dramatic sea stacks, towering rock formations rising from the surf. The most famous are at Rialto Beach and Shishi Beach. These stacks are remnants of ancient headlands that eroded away, leaving isolated pillars of resistant rock. Some are over 100 feet tall. Seabirds nest on them by the thousands. During storms, waves crash against them in explosions of white spray. They're slowly eroding, disappearing into the Pacific, but for now, they create one of the most dramatic coastlines in America. 9. Life in the kelp forests. Just offshore, Washington's waters host kelp forests that thrive in the cold, nutrient-rich Pacific. Giant kelp grows up to 100 feet tall, creating underwater forests where rockfish, lingcod, and octopuses live. Sea otters are slowly returning to Washington after being hunted to near extinction. Gray whales migrate past the coast. Orcas hunt salmon in Puget Sound. The ocean here is cold but incredibly productive, supporting some of the richest marine ecosystems on the West Coast. 8. High desert volcanic glass. Eastern Washington is littered with obsidian, especially near ancient volcanic vents. Native Americans quarried it for millennia, making arrowheads, knives, and tools. The glass is so sharp it can cut at the molecular level. Washington has so much obsidian, it's everywhere, glittering in road cuts, scattered across lava flows, piled in ancient quarries. You can legally collect small amounts in national forests. Holding obsidian means holding 10,000-year-old volcanic glass, frozen lava turned to shining black stone. 7. Where rainforests meet the Pacific. The Olympic Peninsula's coastal strip is a narrow band of temperate rainforest directly facing the Pacific Ocean. Sitka spruce grow within yards of the surf. Waves crash against driftwood logs, while moss drapes from trees overhead. This rainforest receives 150-plus inches of rain annually, creating a landscape of enormous trees, dense undergrowth, and constant moisture. Walking through it feels like being inside a living cathedral where trees touch the ocean and fog rolls in daily. 6. Rivers everywhere. Washington has over 40,000 miles of rivers and streams, more waterways than roads. The Columbia is the largest river in the Pacific Northwest, draining an area the size of France. The Snake, Yakima, Skagit, and Snohomish rivers carve valleys and provide water, power, and salmon habitat. These rivers define Washington's geography, creating boundaries, ecosystems, and economic lifelines. Without them, the state would be uninhabitable desert. 5. The Columbia River, the Northwest's Amazon. The Columbia River is the fourth largest river in North America by volume, discharging 265,000 cubic feet per second into the Pacific. It drains 258,000 square miles across 7 states and 1 Canadian province. Before dams, the Columbia had massive salmon runs, the largest on Earth. Native peoples built entire civilizations around these runs. Today, the river generates more hydroelectric power than any other North American river. The Columbia defined the Pacific Northwest's history and continues shaping its future. 4. Storm of the Century. The Columbus Day storm of 1962 hit Washington and Oregon with winds exceeding 170 miles per hour, the most powerful non-tropical storm ever recorded in the continental United States. The storm flattened forests, killed 46 people, and destroyed billions of board feet of timber. Entire forests were leveled in minutes. The storm moved so fast it traveled from California to Canada in 12 hours, leaving destruction across the entire West Coast. Washington's forests still show scars from that day. 3. The North Cascades Highway. State Route 20, the North Cascades Highway, is one of America's most spectacular drives, crossing the Cascade Range through wilderness so remote it was the last highway corridor completed in the state, 1972. The road climbs to 5,477 feet at Washington Pass, traversing landscapes of glaciers, alpine lakes, and jagged peaks. It closes every winter due to snow, sometimes 20-plus feet deep, and doesn't reopen until April or May. Driving it means passing through one of the wildest, most rugged mountain ranges in America. 2. Tallest dam in the U.S. Grand Coulee Dam on the Columbia River is the largest concrete structure in the United States and the largest producer of hydroelectric power in the nation. It's 550 feet tall and nearly a mile long. The reservoir it created, Lake Roosevelt, stretches 150 miles upstream. The dam was built during the Great Depression and required more concrete than any construction project in history at the time. It transformed eastern Washington from desert to farmland by providing irrigation water. It's a monument to engineering ambition and geological manipulation. 1. The Cascadia Subduction Zone will destroy the coast. The Cascadia Subduction Zone isn't just a threat, it's a geological certainty waiting to happen. Stretching 700 miles from Northern California to Vancouver Island, this fault produces megaquakes every 300 to 500 years. The last one struck January 26, 1700, at approximately 9 p.m. It was magnitude 9.0, one of the most powerful earthquakes in recorded history. When it struck, the ground shook for 4 to 5 minutes. Coastal forests dropped 6 to 8 feet instantly, drowning in salt water. A tsunami formed and reached Japan within hours, documented in Japanese historical records. This event allowed modern scientists to pinpoint the exact date and time of the earthquake by matching Japanese tsunami records with Native American oral histories and geological evidence. We're now 324 years past that date. The average recurrence interval is 243 years. We're overdue. When the next earthquake strikes, it will be catastrophic. The ground will shake for 4 to 6 minutes. Buildings not designed for earthquakes will collapse. Landslides will block roads and highways. Bridges will fail. And within 15 to 30 minutes of the shaking, tsunami waves 30 to 100 feet high will hit the Washington coast. Coastal communities like Long Beach, Westport, and La Push sit in tsunami inundation zones. These towns will have minutes to evacuate. Tsunami evacuation route signs are everywhere, pointing to high ground. Schools practice tsunami drills. Emergency supplies are pre-positioned on hills above towns. The preparation is real because the threat is real. Scientists can't predict exactly when it will happen, but they know it will. Strain is building along the fault. GPS measurements show the coast is compressing, rising slightly as the oceanic plate pushes beneath it. Eventually, the fault will rupture, the coast will drop, and the ocean will surge inland. FEMA estimates the Cascadia earthquake could kill 13,000 people and injure 27,000 more. Damage could exceed $80 billion. It would be the worst natural disaster in U.S. history, affecting Washington, Oregon, and Northern California simultaneously. Entire cities would be devastated. The recovery would take decades. This isn't speculation, it's geology. The fault has ruptured repeatedly throughout history. Evidence of past tsunamis is preserved in coastal sediments, buried sand layers deposited by waves. Each layer represents a past megaquake and tsunami. Scientists have counted at least 19 major events in the past 10,000 years. The pattern is clear. The fault ruptures, centuries pass, the fault ruptures again. Standing on the Washington coast, watching waves crash against sea stacks, you're standing at ground zero for a future catastrophe. The geography that makes Washington spectacular, the volcanoes, mountains, and dramatic coastline, exists because of tectonic forces that will eventually destroy parts of the state. It's the ultimate geographical paradox. The beauty that defines Washington is created by forces that threaten it. So there you have it, 50 wild facts about Washington. From active volcanoes to ancient Ice Age floods, temperate rainforests to high deserts, the evergreen state contains more geographical extremes than almost anywhere in America. Whether it's the threat of megaquakes, the wettest and snowiest places in the nation, or landscapes carved by apocalyptic floods, Washington never stops surprising. It's volcanic, it's wild, it's dangerous, and it's absolutely spectacular.